In the remote village of Sandwatch, where dust devils danced between weathered huts and survival meant squeezing life from unforgiving earth, there lived a girl who spoke to animals. Her name was Elara, and she was 16 years old. Orphaned since birth, raised by a village that tolerated her strangeness only because her gift proved useful. When livestock sickened, Elara could sense what troubled them. When predators threatened, she felt their approach before anyone else. The villagers called her blessed by some, cursed by others, but all agreed she was different in ways that made them uncomfortable. So Elara lived on the margins, helping where needed, but never truly belonging, never quite fitting into the rigid structures of village life. Then one scorching afternoon, while searching for a goat that had wandered from the herd, she found something impossible in a rocky crevice beneath the merciless sun. A lion cub, golden-furred and dying, its small body racked with fever, a wound festering on its flank. No ordinary lion, she realized as she knelt beside it, feeling the strange power radiating from its tiny form, seeing the faint shimmer beneath its skin that suggested something more than animal. This cub was marked, chosen, sacred, and it was dying. Elara made a choice that would change the course of kingdoms. She gathered the dying cub into her arms and carried it home, not knowing she held the future Sun King, not understanding that this single act of compassion would bind her to a destiny greater than any village girl could imagine. Sandwatch existed in that harsh space between the deep desert and the fertile territories, a place where neither prosperity nor total desolation held sway. The village sustained itself through goat herding and small-scale farming of hardy crops that could survive with minimal water. Life was difficult but possible, each day a calculation of resources and survival. The people of Sandwatch were practical to the point of coldness, having learned that sentiment was a luxury they could not afford. They helped each other because cooperation meant survival, but there was little warmth in their assistance, little joy in their celebrations. It was a place where people endured rather than lived, where the harsh environment had worn away everything except the determination to see another sunrise. Into this unforgiving world Elara had been born during a sandstorm so fierce it buried half the village. Her mother died in childbirth, her father lost in the storm trying to secure livestock, and she came into the world an orphan, claimed by no one, belonging to no one. The village midwife, an old woman named Kessa, had taken her in not out of love but out of duty, raising her with the same practical coldness that characterized Sandwatch itself. From her earliest memories, Elara knew she was different. She heard things others did not hear, felt things others could not sense. Animals spoke to her, not in words, but in feelings and images that flooded her mind when she was near them. A dog's hunger was her hunger. A goat's fear became her fear. When she was 5, she warned the village that a pack of desert jackals was approaching from the south, drawn by the scent of newborn goats. The villagers had dismissed her warning until the jackals appeared exactly as she predicted. After that, they used her gift, sending her to check livestock, to scout for predators, to sense dangers that normal observation might miss. But they never embraced her. They feared her strangeness even as they exploited her abilities, keeping her at arm's length, never letting her forget she was different, other, not quite human in their eyes. Elara learned to live with loneliness, to find companionship with animals since people offered none, to speak more to goats and dogs than to the humans who surrounded her. By 16, she had resigned herself to this existence, believing this was all life would ever offer, useful but unloved, necessary but never wanted, surviving but never truly living. The day everything changed began like any other. Elara woke before dawn in the small lean-to attached to Kessa's house, ate a meager breakfast of flatbread and goat cheese, then set out to tend the village herd. Sandwatch's goats grazed in a wide area north of the village, where scrub brush provided enough sustenance if animals spread out and kept moving. It was Elara's responsibility to keep them together, to guide them to better patches, to warn of dangers. She did this work alone as she did most things, walking behind the herd with a shepherd's staff, feeling their simple contentment through the strange connection that was both gift and curse. Around midday, when the sun reached its brutal peak, and even the goats sought shade, Elara noticed one was missing, an old female, stubborn and prone to wandering. Elara sent her awareness searching, feeling for the animal's presence, finding it finally to the east, in rocky terrain the herd normally avoided. Sighing, she secured the main herd in a natural enclosure formed by boulders, then set out after the wayward goat. The terrain grew rougher as she walked, the sand giving way to broken rock and sharp stones that made her bare feet ache. She found the goat eventually, stuck in a crevice between boulders, bleating pitifully. As Elara approached to free the animal, she felt something else, a presence nearby, small and weak, radiating pain and fever. She turned, searching, and saw it wedged in another crevice, partially hidden by shadow. A lion cub, no more than a few weeks old, its golden fur matted with dirt and blood, its small body trembling with fever. Elara froze, her mind racing. Lion cubs did not appear alone. Where were its mother, its pride? She reached out with her gift, searching for other lions nearby, but felt nothing. The cub was alone, abandoned or orphaned. As she knelt beside it, examining the wound on its flank, a deep gash that had become infected, she felt something she had never felt from an animal before. Power. Not the simple life force of a goat or dog, but something vast and ancient, sleeping inside this tiny, dying creature. The cub was marked, she realized with sudden clarity. Not with a visible symbol like the marked humans she had heard stories about, but with something deeper, something woven into its very essence. This was no ordinary lion. This was sacred, chosen, important in ways she could not fully comprehend. The logical choice was to walk away. A dying lion cub was not her responsibility. Sandwatch had enough struggles without taking on impossible burdens. If she left it here, nature would take its course, and she could return to her simple, lonely existence. But as Elara looked at the small creature, feeling its pain and fever through her gift, she knew she could not leave it. She had been abandoned as an infant, left alone in a harsh world, and only Kessa's reluctant duty had kept her alive. How could she do the same to this cub, leave it to die alone when she had the power to try helping? The decision made, she carefully gathered the cub into her arms, cradling its burning body against her chest. It was surprisingly heavy for something so small, and the power inside it made her skin tingle where they touched. The cub made a weak mewing sound, barely conscious, and Elara felt its confusion and fear wash over her. She sent soothing feelings back, trying to communicate safety and help though she had no idea if it understood. She freed the stuck goat with her other hand, then began the long walk back to the village, carrying a dying lion cub and wondering what madness had possessed her. Kessa was not pleased. The old woman stood in the doorway of her hut, arms crossed, face set in familiar disapproval as Elara approached. "What is that?" she demanded. "A lion cub," Elara said, stating the obvious because there was no point trying to hide it. "I found it dying in the rocks. It is marked, Kessa, sacred. I could not leave it." "Marked or not, it is a lion," Kessa said coldly. "Lions kill livestock. Lions kill people. You bring death into this village, girl. But it is a cub, barely weeks old. It will die without help. Then let it die elsewhere. You will not bring it into my home." Elara felt familiar pain at the rejection, the reminder that even after 16 years, Kessa viewed her as an obligation rather than family. "Fine," she said quietly. "I will keep it in my lean-to. But I need water, clean cloth, and whatever healing herbs you have. I will not ask again after this." Kessa's expression softened slightly, perhaps recognizing that Elara had finally reached her limit of tolerance for coldness. She disappeared inside, returning with a water skin, strips of clean linen, and a small pouch of dried herbs. "Fix your wound if you must," she said, her voice still hard but less hostile. "But when it dies, and it will die, you bury it far from the village. We do not need lion stench drawing its pride here." Elara took the supplies without thanking her, carrying the cub to her small space, the lean-to that served as her only private refuge. The lean-to was barely more than a roof and 3 walls, offering protection from sun and wind, but little else. Elara had made it as comfortable as possible over the years, with woven mats on the floor and her few possessions neatly arranged. She laid the cub on her sleeping mat, which was now the cub's as she would not disturb it, and examined the wound closely. It was deep and badly infected, the flesh around it hot and swollen. In a human, such a wound would require a skilled healer's attention and might still prove fatal. In a weeks-old lion cub, the odds were far worse. But Elara had her gift, and she had determination born from too many years of having nothing and no one. She would not let this creature die if her will could prevent it. She cleaned the wound first, using water and cloth to remove dirt and pus, working as gently as possible while the cub whimpered and tried weakly to pull away. She sent soothing feelings through their connection, trying to ease its pain, to communicate that she was helping, not hurting. The cub seemed to understand on some level, growing still beneath her hands, trusting her despite having no reason to trust any creature that walked on 2 legs. Once the wound was clean, Elara prepared a poultice from the herbs Kessa had provided. She did not know their names or proper uses, had never been taught formal healing, but her gift helped. She could feel which herbs the cub's body needed, which would fight infection and reduce fever. She ground them between stones, mixed them with a little water to form a paste, then spread it over the wound, covering it with clean cloth wrapped around the cub's small torso. The cub's fever was dangerously high, its body burning against her hands. She needed to cool it down, but also keep it warm enough that shock did not set in. She soaked another cloth in water and gently wiped the cub's fur, providing some relief from the heat. Then she wrapped it loosely in a blanket, just enough for comfort without trapping too much heat. Through all of this, she maintained her connection to the cub, monitoring its condition, feeling the infection raging through its small body, the power inside it flickering like a flame in wind. This was life and death struggling for dominance, and she could do nothing except provide basic care and hope that the cub's inherent strength would tip the balance toward survival. Elara sat beside the cub through the afternoon and into the evening, checking the wound, changing the poultice, dripping water into its mouth when it seemed conscious enough to swallow. She talked to it constantly, not with words but with feelings, sending images of safety and warmth, of a future where it was strong and healthy. She did not know if it helped, but it made her feel less helpless, less like she was watching something precious die despite her best efforts. As darkness fell and the desert temperature dropped, she curled up beside the cub, sharing her body warmth, feeling its rapid heartbeat against her chest. It was smaller than her torso, this future predator, this marked creature, vulnerable and helpless in ways that made her fiercely protective. She had been vulnerable and helpless once, had survived only through Kessa's grudging care. She would give this cub what she had never received: genuine compassion, care given freely rather than as duty, the knowledge that someone chose to fight for its survival. That night, Elara barely slept, waking every hour to check on the cub, to adjust its bandage, to monitor its fever. Twice she thought it had stopped breathing, her heart seizing in panic, before she felt the faint flutter of life still present. The night stretched endlessly, each hour a test of her determination and the cub's will to live. Dawn came eventually, as it always did, the sun climbing into a cloudless sky and promising another day of brutal heat. Elara examined the cub in better light and found small improvements. The fever had not broken, but it had not worsened either. The wound, while still angry and inflamed, seemed marginally less swollen. The cub's breathing, though labored, had steadied into a more sustainable rhythm. It was surviving, not thriving, but surviving was enough for now. She changed the poultice again, used the last of her water to clean the wound and give the cub something to drink, then sat back and allowed herself to feel cautious hope. She had kept it alive through the night. If she could keep it alive through another day and another, eventually its body might gain the upper hand against infection. Of course, keeping it alive meant she needed more supplies, more water, more herbs, and eventually food once the cub was strong enough to eat. She could not do this alone, and asking Kyosa for help repeatedly would exhaust even grudging tolerance. She needed someone else, someone who might understand why this mattered. She needed the village healer. Sandwatch's healer was a woman named Tana, perhaps 40 years old, with graying hair and hands marked by years of grinding herbs and tending the sick. She was one of the few villagers who had never treated Elara with open hostility, offering instead a neutral pragmatism that felt almost like kindness in comparison to most interactions. Elara found her in the small hut that served as healing house, grinding something in a mortar, and approached hesitantly. "I need help," Elara said without preamble. "I have a patient, a lion cub, and it is marked sacred. I have kept it alive through the night, but I need more supplies, and I do not know what I am doing. I just know what feels right through my gift." Tana looked up, surprise crossing her weathered face. "A marked lion cub?" She set down her mortar and stood. "Show me." They walked together to Elara's lean-to, where the cub lay exactly as she had left it, small and vulnerable on the sleeping mat. Tana knelt beside it, examining the wound, feeling its fever, and her expression grew serious. "This is a mortal wound for something so young. The infection has spread throughout its body. You have done well keeping it alive this long, but its chances are poor, I know," Elara said. "But I have to try. It chose to survive the night. I owe it another day, and another after that, for as long as it keeps fighting." Tana studied Elara for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she nodded. "I will help you. Not because I think it will live, but because your compassion deserves support, even if the outcome is tragic. I will provide herbs and show you proper techniques. But you must understand, Elara, that sometimes mercy means ending suffering rather than prolonging it. If this cub reaches a point where it is only suffering with no hope of recovery, you must be strong enough to let it go." "I will," Elara promised, though in her heart she knew she would fight until the very end, that she would not give up as long as the cub kept breathing. Tana returned shortly with a basket of supplies, better herbs than Kessa's limited selection, proper bandages, and a salve she said would fight infection more effectively than a simple poultice. She showed Elara how to clean the wound properly, how to tell if infection was worsening versus healing, how to monitor for signs that the body was shutting down versus rallying. She explained that lion cubs were remarkably resilient if they had the will to survive, but that will alone was not always enough against severe wounds and infection. After Tana left, promising to return that evening to check progress, Elara implemented everything she had learned, cleaning and rebandaging the wound with proper technique, applying the salve, making the cub as comfortable as possible. And through it all, she maintained her connection, feeling the cub's pain and fever, sending back strength and encouragement, creating a bond that went deeper than simple caretaker and patient. The days that followed blurred into a routine of constant vigilance and care. Elara barely left the lean-to except to fetch water or receive supplies from Tana, who visited twice daily to monitor the cub and instruct Elara in increasingly complex healing techniques. The village left her alone, perhaps sensing she would not be swayed from this path, perhaps simply indifferent to how she spent her time as long as she still performed her duties with the herd when possible. The cub's condition fluctuated wildly. One morning its fever would break and it would seem to rally, only for the fever to spike again that evening. The wound showed signs of healing, then worsened again. It was 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, then 1 forward, then 4 back. Elara rode these waves of hope and despair, learning to celebrate small victories without becoming complacent, to endure setbacks without surrendering to hopelessness. Through it all, her connection to the cub deepened. She began to understand its nature, to sense the vast power sleeping inside this small body. This was no ordinary animal. This was a vessel for something ancient and divine, chosen by forces beyond her comprehension. The solar lion, she realized eventually. This cub carried the potential to become a sun king, one of the legendary rulers marked by the great totem itself. She was caring for royalty, though this royalty was currently unconscious and fighting for each breath. On the 7th day, something remarkable happened. Elara woke from another restless night to find the cub's eyes open and focused on her. Not the glazed, fevered stare she had seen during previous moments of consciousness, but genuine awareness. The cub made a small sound, not a distressed mew, but something closer to curiosity or greeting. Elara's heart leaped with joy so intense it brought tears to her eyes. She reached out carefully, letting the cub sniff her hand, and felt through their connection that the fog of sickness had lifted. The cub was still weak, still recovering, but it was present, aware, and the worst danger had passed. "Hello," Elara whispered, knowing the cub could not understand words, but hoping her tone conveyed her relief and happiness. "Welcome back. You are safe here. You are going to be all right." The cub's response was to lick her hand weakly, its rough tongue rasping against her skin, and the gesture was so trusting, so innocent, that Elara felt something crack open in her chest, some wall she had built around her heart to protect herself from the coldness of her life. She loved this creature, she realized, loved it with an intensity that terrified her, because love meant vulnerability, meant having something that could be lost. From that day forward, the cub's recovery progressed steadily. The fever broke completely and did not return. The wound began to heal in earnest, clean flesh replacing infection, the edges closing. The cub regained strength day by day, progressing from barely lifting its head to sitting up, then standing shakily, then walking a few steps. It ate for the first time on the 10th day, lapping water first, then meat Elara had begged from the village butcher. Watching the cub eat was one of the most satisfying moments of her life, proof that it would survive, that her weeks of desperate care had been worth every sleepless night and moment of fear. As the cub healed, Elara observed its personality emerging. It was curious about everything, exploring the limited space of the lean-to with growing confidence, investigating every object with its nose and paws. It was playful, pouncing on moving shadows and Elara's toes with kitten fierceness that was more adorable than threatening. And it was affectionate, constantly seeking her presence, curling up against her whenever possible, purring when she scratched behind its ears. Elara had never had anything that wanted her company, that actively sought her out rather than merely tolerating her presence. The cub's simple, uncomplicated affection was a balm on wounds she had not known she carried, healing parts of her that had nothing to do with physical health. 3 weeks after finding the dying cub, Elara sat in her lean-to with it lying across her lap, now too large to fit comfortably, but refusing to move because this was its favorite resting place. She scratched its ears absently, thinking about the future for the first time since beginning this journey. The cub could not stay in Sandwatch forever. As it grew, it would become dangerous, its predator instincts inevitably emerging. The villagers already whispered about her madness, and once the cub reached a size where it could threaten livestock or people, they would demand its removal or death. She could not let that happen. But where could she take it? Lions belonged in the wild, with prides and territories. Except this was no ordinary lion. This was marked, destined to become a sun king. Did that mean she should take it to one of the great cities, present it to human rulers who might understand its significance? The thought of walking into a city like Hemara or Solhaven, a barefoot village girl carrying a lion cub, seemed absurd. They would think her mad or dangerous, might kill the cub as a threat. Yet keeping it isolated seemed wrong too, as if she was preventing it from fulfilling whatever destiny the solar lion had planned. She had no answers, only the certainty that she and the cub were bound together now, that she was responsible for it, not just until it healed, but until she could ensure its future was secure. Her contemplation was interrupted by Tana's arrival, the healer making her regular evening check. She examined the cub with obvious satisfaction. Remarkable. This should have been impossible, you know. A wound that severe in something so young, the infection so widespread. By all medical knowledge, this creature should have died. That it lives and thrives is testament to either your gift, its inherent power, or both combined. Perhaps a little of both, Elara said. I could feel what it needed, and it had the strength to use what I provided. We fought for its survival together. Tana sat beside her, her expression growing serious. Elara, you need to understand what you have here. This is not just a lion. Based on the power I can sense even without your gift, this is likely a future vessel for the solar lion totem. In a few years, if it survives to adulthood, it may transform into something more than animal. It may become a sun king. Do you know what that means? Elara shook her head. She knew stories of sun kings, legendary rulers marked by the solar lion, but the details were vague, filtered through village gossip and exaggeration. Sun kings appear once every few generations, Tana explained. They are marked by the solar lion, granted immense power, and they inevitably rise to leadership positions because people recognize their divine authority. Some become rulers of kingdoms. Others become military leaders or spiritual guides. But all share the mark's power and the responsibility that comes with it. This cub, if it is what I believe, will grow into something extraordinary. And you, Elara, will be forever linked to it, because you saved its life and bonded with it during its most vulnerable time. That is a heavy burden for a village girl who just wanted to help a dying animal, Elara said with a weak smile. Tana placed a hand on her shoulder. You have always been meant for more than Sandwatch. Your gift, your compassion, your strength. They were wasted here, diminished by a village too small and scared to recognize your value. Perhaps this cub is not the only one with a destiny waiting to unfold. Perhaps the solar lion brought you together because both of you needed each other, because your paths were meant to intertwine. Elara wanted to dismiss this as mystical nonsense, but she could not. From the moment she found the dying cub, her life had felt different, charged with purpose and meaning it had lacked before. She was not just surviving anymore. She was nurturing, protecting, fighting for something beyond herself, and it felt right in ways nothing else ever had. Maybe you are correct, she said quietly. Maybe we were meant to find each other. The question is, what do we do now? Now, Tana said, you continue doing what you have been doing. Care for this cub. Let it grow and heal. And when the time comes to leave Sandwatch, because you will have to leave eventually, trust your gift to guide you where you need to go. Destiny has a way of making paths clear when we are ready to walk them. As the weeks turned into months, the cub grew rapidly. At 2 months old, it was 3 times its original size. At 4 months, it reached Elara's waist. Its wound healed completely, leaving only a faint scar beneath golden fur. Its strength increased exponentially, its playful pounces becoming genuinely forceful, its jaws developing serious bite strength, even though it never bit Elara with intent to harm. The villagers grew increasingly nervous as the cub's size approached that of a full-grown dog, their whispers becoming loud complaints. Kessa confronted Elara directly. You must remove that beast before it kills someone. It is no longer a helpless cub, but a predator, and predators do not belong in a village. I know, Elara said. I have been preparing to leave. Where will you go? Kessa asked, and for the first time, Elara heard something other than coldness in the old woman's voice. Perhaps concern, or at least curiosity. I do not know yet. Somewhere we can both be safe. Somewhere the cub can grow into what it is meant to become. Kessa nodded slowly. Then go with my blessing, such as it is. You have been a strange child and a stranger adult, but you have done your duties well. Perhaps you will find a place in this world better suited to your nature than Sandwatch ever was. It was the closest thing to kindness Kessa had ever offered, and Elara felt unexpected emotion tighten her throat. Thank you for taking me in, even if you did it from duty rather than love. You kept me alive, and that matters. They parted without embrace or affection, but with mutual acknowledgment of the roles they had played in each other's lives. Elara gathered her few belongings, filled water skins, packed what little food she had, and at dawn one morning slipped out of Sandwatch with the cub at her side, walking east toward the rising sun, because that direction felt right in ways she could not articulate. The desert stretched before them, vast and indifferent, offering danger and possibility in equal measure. Elara was 16 years old, orphaned, raised without love, and now she walked into an uncertain future with nothing except a growing lion and a gift for speaking to animals. It should have been terrifying. Instead, it felt like freedom. For the first time in her life, she was choosing her own path rather than following one predetermined by circumstance and village expectations. She had saved the cub, but perhaps the cub had saved her too, given her a reason to leave, a purpose beyond mere survival, someone to care for who cared for her in return with uncomplicated loyalty. They traveled for weeks, moving slowly through harsh terrain, surviving on water found at oases and food Elara hunted or scavenged. The cub proved surprisingly adept at helping, its hunting instincts emerging naturally as it grew. Together they made a functional team, her gift allowing them to coordinate, to understand each other's signals, to function almost as a single unit. The cub was no longer small enough to carry, but it walked beside her tirelessly, occasionally ranging ahead to scout, but always returning, always checking that she kept pace. Their bond deepened with every day, moving beyond animal and caretaker into something more profound. They were partners, family, bonded by shared survival and mutual dependence. Elara named the cub Solian, after the sun itself, because he glowed golden in the sunlight and radiated warmth that had nothing to do with temperature. He responded to the name, his ears perking whenever she said it, and she knew through their connection that he understood this was his designation, the sound that meant him specifically. One evening, approximately 2 months after leaving Sandwatch, they made camp near a small spring, and Elara felt something change in Solian. His power, which had been a constant background presence, suddenly surged, flooding through him and spilling over into their connection. She gasped at the intensity, feeling his body changing, growing not just physically, but metaphysically. Light began to emanate from his skin, a golden glow that intensified until she had to shield her eyes. When the light faded, Solian was larger, his form more defined, and on his chest, where there had been only fur, lines of gold appeared, swirling and coalescing into a mark, the solar lion's symbol. He was being marked, transformed from a lion cub into something more, into a vessel for divine power. The transformation lasted only minutes, but when it ended, Solian collapsed, exhausted, and Elara rushed to his side, checking him frantically through their connection. He was unharmed, she realized with relief, merely drained by the immense energy required for the marking. She sat beside him, stroking his fur, and felt his contentment, his pride at this new power. He was still Solian, still the affectionate cub she had saved, but he was also more now, carrying responsibilities and potential that would shape his future. When Solian recovered, Elara examined the mark closely. It was beautiful, intricate lines forming a lion within a lion, the smaller image nested inside the larger, both radiating power. She had seen marks on humans in the stories and occasional travelers who passed through Sandwatch, but never on an animal, never something this magnificent. This confirmed what Tana had suspected. Solian was destined to become a Sun King, but what did that mean for their immediate future? The mark meant he would grow faster, become stronger, eventually transform into something beyond a normal lion. Did it also mean they should seek out other marked individuals, find communities that understood such things? Elara had no answers, only the certainty that they needed to keep moving, keep surviving, trust that destiny would guide them when guidance was needed. They continued their journey east, now traveling with greater purpose, because the mark seemed to pull Solian in a specific direction, and Elara followed where he led. 6 months after leaving Sandwatch, they reached the outskirts of a great city, towers of white stone rising from the desert like a vision from dreams. Solhaven, Elara realized, recognizing descriptions from travelers' tales. The merchant city where diversity was celebrated, where marked individuals gathered, where perhaps a girl and a marked lion might find acceptance and purpose. Entering a city with a lion presented obvious challenges. Even though Solian was still young, probably 8 months old now, but already the size of a large dog due to the mark's enhancement, he looked dangerous to those who did not understand his nature. Elara approached the gates cautiously, ready to retreat if guards reacted with hostility. But the guards at Solhaven's western gate, accustomed to strangeness given the city's cosmopolitan nature, merely raised eyebrows at the sight of a teenage girl, accompanied by a marked lion. One of them, an older man with graying hair and kind eyes, stepped forward. "Welcome to Solhaven. That is an unusual traveling companion." "He is marked by the solar lion," Elara said, deciding honesty was safer than deception. "I saved his life when he was dying as a cub. We are bonded now. I do not know where else to go that would accept us both." The guard studied Solian, seeing the mark, recognizing its significance. Marked ones are welcome in Solhaven, whether human or animal, but you will want to register with the Council of Marked Individuals. They can provide guidance and ensure you have resources. The council hall is in the city center, near the Grand Market. Ask anyone for directions. He waved them through, and just like that, Elara and Solian walked into Solhaven, into a new chapter of their lives. The city was overwhelming after years in tiny Sandwatch and months in the empty desert. Thousands of people filled streets lined with shops and stalls, selling everything imaginable. Languages Elara did not recognize flowed around her, mixing with the ones she did. Smells of spices and cooked food made her stomach clench with hunger. Buildings rose 3 and 4 stories, higher than anything she had imagined possible. She felt like a child lost in an adult world, uncertain which direction to turn, which path to take. But Solian walked confidently beside her, his mark glowing softly, drawing attention, but also respect. People moved aside to let them pass, some staring, some nodding in acknowledgment. They found the council hall eventually, a grand building of marble and granite with gardens surrounding it. A functionary at the entrance, a young woman with clipboard and efficient demeanor, looked up as they approached. "I need to register as marked," Elara said. "My companion is Solian, marked by the Solar Lion. I am Elara, his bonded protector." The functionary's eyes widened as she saw Solian properly. A marked lion. "I have never processed one before. Please wait here." She disappeared inside, returning moments later with an older woman who radiated authority and wore robes marked with constellations. The woman introduced herself as Counselor Solian, marked by the Night Panther, and her violet eyes studied both Elara and Solian with intense interest. "This is unprecedented," Solian said. "A marked lion bonded to an unmarked human. How did this occur?" Elara told the story simply, how she found Solian dying, how she saved him, how they bonded during his recovery, and had been traveling together since. Solian listened without interruption, then nodded slowly. "The Solar Lion marked this cub because it sensed potential for greatness, but also because you were there, because your compassion and gift created the conditions for survival. You are bonded in ways that transcend normal animal-human relationships. This has implications for both your futures." "What kind of implications?" Elara asked. Solian gestured for them to follow her inside, leading them to a private chamber with comfortable seating and windows overlooking gardens. As she poured tea for Elara and provided water for Solian, she explained, "Marked lions are extremely rare, appearing perhaps once every century. They eventually become sun kings, leaders who unite territories, establish new kingdoms, bring order to chaos. But they do not reach that potential alone. They need guidance, partnership, protection during their vulnerable years. Typically, that role falls to marked humans who recognize their importance. But in your case, the bond formed before traditional structures could intervene. You have become his guardian by choice and circumstance, and that bond will shape both your lives. He will grow into his power over the next few years, eventually transforming into a form that can interact with human society more directly. And you will grow alongside him, your gift evolving, your role expanding." "What role?" Elara asked. "I am just a village girl with a strange ability to sense animals. I have no training in leadership or politics or any of the things Sun Kings need." "You have compassion," Solian said firmly, "and that is more valuable than any political training. You have the ability to communicate with Solian in ways no one else can. You have already proven your loyalty and dedication by keeping him alive against impossible odds. These qualities make you irreplaceable in his development. The role I foresee for you is that of speaker, one who translates between marked lion and human society, who helps him navigate the complexities of leadership when the time comes. It is an honored position, one that requires trust and wisdom. You possess both." Elara felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what Solian described, by the implication that her small act of compassion had bound her to destinies involving kingdoms and power. She looked at Solian, who had settled at her feet, his head resting on her lap, completely relaxed in the way he only was when they were safe. She could not imagine abandoning him, walking away from their bond. But she also could not imagine herself as some grand figure standing beside a Sun King. Yet perhaps that was the point. Perhaps great things were always built from small moments of choice, of compassion, of refusing to walk away when walking away would be easier. Solian arranged for them to have rooms in a house maintained by the council for marked individuals, a comfortable space with a garden where Solian could exercise without disturbing neighbors. She provided introductions to other marked ones living in Solhaven, creating a community around Elara and Solian. For the first time in her life, Elara found herself surrounded by people who did not view her as strange or cursed, but simply as another person with a gift, navigating the complexities of being marked or bonded to marked individuals. She met healers who taught her better techniques for maintaining Solian's health as he grew. She met scholars who helped her understand the history and significance of Sun Kings. She met warriors who trained her in basic combat skills, explaining that protecting a future king required more than just compassion and communication. Months passed, then years. Solian grew rapidly, his size eventually surpassing any normal lion, his intelligence developing in ways that confirmed he was something beyond simple animal. By his second birthday, he was massive, easily 7 feet long and 500 pounds, his mane full and golden, his eyes holding intelligence that matched any human. The mark on his chest had grown with him, now spanning most of his torso, intricate and beautiful, and something else had happened. Elara had changed too. Her gift, always present but limited, had evolved. She could now communicate not just with Solian, but with any animal within 100 paces. She could sense emotions and intentions from humans as well, a low-level empathy that made her remarkably good at reading situations and people. And strangest of all, a mark had appeared on her own skin. Not a totem mark like Solian's, but something related, a smaller version of his lion's symbol on her left shoulder blade. Solian explained that this sometimes happened with bonds this deep, the marked individual's power bleeding over, granting marks to their bonded companions. Elara was now marked, or at least marked adjacent, and that changed her status in Solhaven and beyond. She was no longer just a girl with a strange gift. She was the bonded speaker of a future Sun King, a person of significance in her own right. The realization was both empowering and terrifying, and she often felt like an imposter playing at importance. But Solian's steady presence and unwavering trust reminded her that she had earned this place, not through birth or destiny, but through the choice to carry a dying cub home and refuse to let it perish. When Solian was 3 years old, something remarkable occurred. He spoke, not with animal sounds, but with actual language, words formed through their bond and transmitted directly into Elara's mind. "Thank you," he said one evening as they sat together in the garden watching sunset, "for saving me, for staying with me, for being my family when I had none. You have given me everything, and I will spend my life proving worthy of that gift." Elara had tears streaming down her face before he finished, overwhelmed by hearing his thoughts as words, by the depth of gratitude and love in them. "You gave me everything, too," she replied through their bond. "You gave me purpose and love and a place in the world. We saved each other, Solian. That is what family does. From that day forward, they could communicate fluently, their bond allowing complex conversations that felt as natural as speaking aloud. It opened new possibilities, allowing Solian to express thoughts and ideas that went far beyond simple animal desires. He had opinions about governance and justice, about how territories should be managed, about what made a good leader. He studied human society through Elara's explanations and his own observations, preparing for the day when he would need to interact with that society as more than a magnificent animal. And that day was approaching. Multiple delegations from various territories had visited Solhaven, specifically to meet the marked lion, to assess whether he might be the Sun King prophesied to unite the fractious desert kingdoms. Solian met them all with regal bearing, his intelligence impressing even skeptics, his mark blazing with the solar lion's power. They offered him positions, territories, resources, but Solian declined them all, saying through Elara that he was not yet ready, that he needed more time to mature and learn before accepting the responsibilities of kingship. On Solian's 5th birthday, another transformation occurred. He had grown as large as he would get physically, but his power continued to intensify. One night, that power reached critical mass, and Solian underwent a metamorphosis that stunned even Selene, who had seen much in her decades as a marked one. Golden light engulfed Solian, so bright it lit the entire garden like midday. When it faded, he stood in a new form, still clearly lion, still massive and magnificent, but now with elements that were almost human. He could stand on hind legs when needed, his front paws capable of grasping and manipulating objects with startling dexterity. His face had shifted subtly, capable of expressing emotions that were readable even to humans unfamiliar with lion body language. And his mark had expanded, covering much of his body in golden patterns that shifted and flowed like living art. He was neither lion nor human, but something in between, something new and glorious. The solar lion's chosen vessel fully realized. This is who I truly am, Solian communicated to Elara, his mental voice resonating with power. I am Sun King, marked and transformed, ready to fulfill the purpose for which I was born. But I am also still Solian, still the cub you saved, still your family. That will never change, no matter how much I change in other ways. Word of Solian's transformation spread rapidly through Solhaven and beyond. Delegations that had visited before returned with more substantial offers. Representatives from kingdoms Elara had never heard of arrived requesting audiences. The great and powerful of the desert territories all wanted the Sun King's favor, his alliance, his leadership. It was overwhelming, and Elara found herself thrust into the role Selene had predicted years before. Speaker, translator, advisor, the one person Solian trusted completely to help navigate political complexities. She had to learn quickly, had to develop skills she never imagined needing. Diplomacy, strategy, reading hidden agendas, distinguishing genuine offers from manipulative ones. Selene guided her, as did other marked ones with political experience, but ultimately, Elara had to develop her own judgment, her own voice. She was 21 years old now, no longer the barefoot village girl, but still fundamentally the same person, compassionate, honest, fiercely loyal to those she loved. Those qualities served her well, making her a trusted intermediary even as she learned to be more strategic and calculating when needed. After months of deliberation and consultation, Solian made his decision. He would not accept any existing kingdom's offer to rule. Instead, he would establish something new, a territory specifically for marked individuals and those who supported them, a place where the old hierarchies mattered less than capability and character. It would be called Sunhaven, built in the desert between existing kingdoms, a neutral ground where marked ones could gather, train, and serve as peacekeepers and mediators for the fractious territories. It was ambitious, perhaps impossible, but Solian had the power and presence to make others believe. One by one, marked individuals committed to his vision. Resources flowed in from kingdoms hoping to curry favor with the new Sun King. Within a year, Sunhaven was more than a dream. It was a growing settlement, attracting marked ones and their supporters, establishing itself as a force that could not be ignored. And at its heart was Solian, the Sun King, with Elara always at his side, his speaker and bonded companion, the one who had carried a dying cub home 5 years ago and set in motion everything that followed. Elara stood on a tower in Sunhaven, looking out over the growing city, marveling at how far they had come from that desperate day when she found Solian dying in the rocks. She felt his presence behind her before he spoke, their bond allowing such awareness. "Thinking about the past?" he asked, his mental voice warm with affection. "Always," she replied, wondering how a dying cub and a lonely village girl built all this. "We built it together," Solian said, moving to stand beside her, his massive form radiating power and warmth. "You saved me, yes, but I saved you too. We gave each other purpose and family and a future neither could have achieved alone. That is the power of connection, of choosing compassion, even when logic argues for self-preservation. You taught me that, Elara. You showed me that strength without compassion is tyranny, that power means nothing without someone to serve. I am Sun King because the solar lion marked me, but I am a good king because you raised me with love and showed me what true leadership looks like." Elara felt tears prick her eyes, as she always did when Solian expressed such thoughts. She placed her hand on his mane, feeling the power humming beneath his fur. "We will do great things together," she said. "We will build something that lasts beyond our lifetimes, something that proves marked ones can create rather than just destroy, can unite rather than divide. That is our purpose. That is why we found each other." "Exactly," Solian agreed. "And that is why I will never forget that before I was Sun King, before I had power or purpose, I was a dying cub, and you chose to save me. That choice changed the world, Elara. Never doubt that." If this story moved you, if you felt the bond between Elara and Solian, if you recognized that the smallest acts of compassion can have the greatest consequences, share your thoughts in the comments below. What lives have you saved through simple kindness? What connections have shaped your destiny? Your stories remind us all that we are defined not by our circumstances but by our choices, especially the choices to help when helping is difficult, to care when caring costs us something, to refuse to walk away when walking away would be easier. And if you have not yet subscribed to Solaris Legends, join us now. Become part of this community, celebrating compassion, connection, and the truth that saving one life can change countless others. Hit subscribe and activate notifications so you never miss another tale from this desert realm where dying cubs become kings, where village girls become legends, where every act of kindness echoes through eternity. This is Solaris Legends, where marks are earned and destinies are forged through choices made in moments of crisis.